Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's videos, I am very pleased to present you with another entry in my Ask an Archaeologist interview series. Our guest today is Megan Kumorek, who is an Egyptologist from the US, currently living in the UK. She has an undergraduate degree in anthropology from the University of Arizona and a master's degree in Egyptology from the University of Liverpool. She is currently researching programs and funding in order to pursue her PhD in Egyptology. She is very active in the online archaeological space. She volunteers for MENAM Archaeology and Safe Cultural Heritage Group as the host of their video series, The Weekend Talk. I've actually been a guest of Megan's on The Weekend Talk, and you can find a link to that interview down in the description box below if you'd like to check it out. She's been really proactive in helping with online engagement of archaeology, especially during the pandemic when everybody's been stuck at home. I'm really excited to interview her today, especially talking about her experience digging in Peru, Belize, and Egypt, as well as a little bit more about her primary topic of research, which is ancient graffiti. Before we get into the interview, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos from me and to give me a follow on Instagram at rachellament.digs. Please join me in welcoming Megan to the channel today, and without further ado, let's dig in. A big welcome today to Megan Kumorek, who's Egyptian Rose on Instagram. She's joining us here on Ask an Archaeologist today to speak all about her life living and working in America, being an archaeologist, and also studying Egyptology. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. It's really great to be here. Finally, I can now be on the show that I watch religiously.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. Megan and I have been corresponding and chatting on Instagram for a little while now. We actually have so much in common. We're both like really big history people. We both got married at historic properties, and recently we both put out the same April Fool's joke on our Instagram accounts,
That
which
was
was
brilliant.
quite fun. So we'll kick everything off today with our first question, which is what inspired you to study archaeology at university?
Long story short, I think everyone is either a history nerd when they're young or they're a dinosaur nerd. And I definitely started out as a dinosaur nerd, but I was watching Jurassic Park when I was 3, and I immediately just fell in love with the fact that you could dig up old things. And my mom was like, wait, the dinosaurs aren't the cool bit? It's like, no, they're cool, but digging up old things, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So she like transformed our American backyard. Half of it turned into a sand pit, and she would like bury my toys in the sand so I could dig them up. And at that point I was like, can this be a job? Like, I love this. My mom said, yeah, it's archaeology. So I went through my entire public school life doing a bunch of other projects. I was like a competitive dancer, I was in opera, I was a cheerleader, performing arts, things like that. And then I got to the point where I was like, what do I really want to do with my life? And I still really liked ancient history, and I liked digging up old things. So I started looking at programs for archaeology. I liked Northern Arizona University because I'm from Arizona. NAU came back with a full tuition scholarship, and I said, well, that's my decision. I obviously will go there then.
That sounds really exciting. I wish my parents had turned my backyard into a sand pit for me to dig in. That would have been super fun. Is there any like part of your childhood or like a moment that like really sparked your interest in ancient Egypt?
So my dad's side of the fence from Mexico, but his father used to travel a lot to like the Middle East. So he used to go to Jordan, he used to go to Egypt, and he would bring back photographs, little trinkets. And that was the moment where I was like, I need to learn more about what he's bringing back.
So you did your undergraduate degree in the US. And then, like myself, you moved to the UK for your master's. So what motivated you to move across the pond to pursue your master's? Tell us a little bit more about why you decided to come to the UK and specifically to Liverpool to study for your master's degree.
Originally, I was a Central and South American archaeologist, and I had a professor who was born and raised in Belize. He got his PhD in Mayan archaeology. He received his degree at University College London.
Okay.
And when I was talking about my love for Egyptology, he said, well, look at UCL, go see if they have like a program for you. I'll give you a letter of recommendation. So I reached out to UCL and I gave them my research, which was like ancient graffiti. They had said, oh, there's someone at Liverpool who might be interested, go talk to Liverpool. So then I go talk to Liverpool. Liverpool then said they were very interested, but that there was a specialist in Oxford that I should talk to. So then I went and talked to Oxford. Oxford gave me an interview, but unfortunately the woman that I wanted to work with for my MA just basically said that she was sick, she couldn't take on students. So I got my unfortunate rejection letter from Oxford, which I guess is still really cool to receive any letter from Oxford.
Yeah.
But I got the rejection letter, was obviously distraught about it. But Liverpool had said, depending on how that application process went, do let them know so that they could proceed further if they wanted, obviously, to put me on. So I said, okay, I'm really sad, but I'll email Liverpool. I opened up my email, and in my inbox was already my acceptance letter from Liverpool, because apparently Oxford told Liverpool that, unfortunately they couldn't take me. Will you take her? They said, of course, no interview needed. I just got
Oh.
accepted. Yeah. And I just went, oh, thank goodness. That sounds amazing. Yes, please. And immediately, I think it was like a turnaround of 2 days, I decided, well, I guess I'm going to Liverpool.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. That's really a great story that, even though you couldn't get to Oxford, like they, begged you up to Liverpool. That's very nice of them
Yeah.
to do. What specifically were you studying there, and what was your dissertation for your master's?
My MA is in Egyptology. A lot of
Hmm.
people, I think Egyptology, if you just know basic Latin, things like that, it's just the study of Egypt. That's just what it means. But
Hmm.
it's not necessarily archaeology. It's a lot of language. It's a lot
Hmm.
of like reading ancient Egyptian texts. Some schools now will integrate archaeology into that, which is great. I think it needs to be a more holistic approach.
Hmm.
But for my degree, I started out with a lot of language. And I said, well, I'm more interested in ancient graffiti, and a lot of the graffiti that I like to research is not textual, it's just image based. And they
Hmm.
said, okay, well then let's look at, we'll put you into like art classes, things like that, so I can learn more of the iconography of ancient Egypt. And my dissertation then transformed into looking at temple graffiti in Thebes, which is modern day Luxor. So
Hmm.
Luxor Temple was what I focused in. And you get some really interesting graffiti. So my dissertation looked at priestly graffiti in particular, where the priests were making images of themselves, mimicking the images of the pharaohs, of the kings that were on the wall. So if there was a king that had his children lined up behind him, the pharaohs were like, well, we're coming into power now, so maybe we'll put our images on the opposite wall with all of our children behind us. And because priests are trained as scribes and as artisans, they can make it look just as beautiful as the
Yeah.
iconography of the kings. So
Yeah.
when you do walk into these temples, you're thinking it's meant to be there, but it's actually graffiti. It's not, it wasn't
Yeah.
sanctioned by the temple. It was more so a power trip, which was absolutely fantastic. And you also get, of course, graffiti. We see it all the time. Sometimes it can be a little crude, and the
Hmm.
priests were no different. So they would always draw some fallacies, like some nice little phallic images. And there's a lovely one. I think I had to write it down because sometimes I always forget like what it said. But there's like a priestly graffiti, a graffito, and it's of a god, and he has lovely penis, as I will say on here. Please censor that out if you need to. But
Okay.
the high priest actually did a text on there as well, and it translates to, here we go, I wrote this down. It's a restoration, basically. It says, restoration of monuments which the high priest of Amun-Ra, king of the gods, Menkhepera, true of voice, the son of King Penujum Meriaben, made in the dominion of his father Amenhotep. And basically he's saying, like, I preserved this graffito, I'm great. And if you research this graffito, he actually just enlarged the phallic image
Yeah,
and then
right.
put his name on it, saying that he was fantastic. So at least I know, and I can confirm that we're no different 2,000 years ago,
Yeah.
5,000 years ago, all the same.
On that note, actually, speaking of ancient graffiti, I don't know if this is necessarily like an opinion question, but like the most famous ancient graffiti that I know is, I don't know if this is actually technically what it's called, but the tomb of Senenmut, the one where like one of the workers allegedly carved Hatshepsut getting it
Yeah,
on with her priest, which is like the like I think probably the origin of the theory that her and Senmut or Senenmut, I'm not sure which one's the correct one,
both are
were
technically
lovers.
correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like what's it, so as someone who studies ancient graffiti, tell us a little bit more about that if
So
you
you
can.
do find a lot of like workman graffiti, for instance, and it's still a
Yeah.
very contested thing
Hmm.
amongst us Egyptologists, because we have some Egyptologists who will say that they're just practice graffiti, that sometimes they're just trying to practice how they're going to then do art.
Hmm.
Other times the workmen wouldn't have been trained in that, so I don't know what they're actually practicing. Usually it's just self-expression or trying to put yourself on a landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that image is actually really interesting, and it does bring up that, like, oh, is she sleeping with basically the man who's designing all of her temples?
Yeah.
Um, Nothing confirmed, but there are a lot of speculations, I guess. Like the hot
Mm-hmm.
tea of the time was that she was doing that, and either she was, and she was sleeping with the grand designer of things, or she was just a really powerful woman that men didn't like, because
Mm-hmm.
even though women could be in power in ancient Egypt, it just wasn't as common.
So, finished your MA at Liverpool, and you're still in the UK. So tell us a little bit more about what your career and life has been like since you finished school.
Been hectic. I graduated at the end of 2018 in December.
Okay.
I met my husband actually at Liverpool. So
Mm-hmm.
on graduation day, he actually proposed to me. So immediately I was
Oh.
like, oh, okay, another life plan I have to plan for. I started planning a wedding. I started planning to start a PhD. I had a lot of applications in the States going at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pandemic hit, because I took 2019 off to just like explore
Mm-hmm.
my other interests before delving into something like a PhD.
Yeah.
But of course, taking that year off then meant that by the time I could decide to go anywhere, the pandemic happened. I didn't want to go anywhere, couldn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I put the PhD on hold,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to then navigate how to plan a wedding, how to plan visas, how can I move to the UK, how can I save money, and how
Yeah.
can I still be an archaeologist during this pandemic? How do you still be active in the community when you
Yeah.
can't travel to Egypt because it's not safe?
Mm-hmm.
And fun side note about that, I have worked in Egypt. I worked in 2017, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually caught a different form of COVID there. I caught Middle
What?
Eastern Respiratory Syndrome,
Oh,
which is a form of
MERS.
COVID. Yeah,
Yeah.
it has like a 30% kill rate, and I caught it in the middle of a desert in a farm area, and I didn't know I had it until I recovered and went back home. And then they said that more than likely, based on all of my symptoms, based on my lack of breathing, I had to use a rescue inhaler. They said
Mm-hmm.
that I more than likely caught it. I've survived some type of COVID at least, but like that was that was my indication of, now we're in a pandemic. I can't travel to Egypt. There's no way I'm going to be doing that again
Yeah.
until I have vaccines, until I'm safe. I really had to think, okay, what is my career going to look like now? I got married, I got the permission to work in the UK, and I was trying so hard to apply for like museum work or
Mm-hmm.
archival work, because I have a background in museum studies as well. So I've worked in museums. Unfortunately, because I am foreign, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to get into. And
No.
because the academic career market is saturated with a lot of PhD people with not a lot of positions going,
Mm-hmm.
there are moments where museums were asking for MA or like MBA degrees, but PhDs were grabbing them because PhD people were taking whatever they could get. And I mean,
Yeah.
I would be the same way, but of course
Mm-hmm.
that limited what I could do. So I'm actually currently, for money side of things, I'm actually a puppy therapy specialist. I bring puppies to your work so you can de-stress, which then means I can go home and do academic writing that I'm
Yeah.
now doing with like internet stuff, and then I can de-stress with puppies. But it's something that I always tell people: if you're going to go into academia, be very happy with your side projects, because
Yeah.
sometimes your side projects will be the only form of like archaeology or academia that you can do. But
Mm-hmm.
so puppies are great, fantastic. Do follow me on Instagram for puppy content, because it is there. But I am currently working, I partnered with a group called Save Cultural Heritage Group, where we're a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of professionals and academics who are bringing cultural heritage to people online through
Mm-hmm.
like online courses, or I host a YouTube show called Weekend Talk, so go check that out. It's
Yep.
not as popular as this show, but maybe one
That's fine.
day.
Hey guys, if you're watching, I've been on Weekend Talk and I can attest it's a really fun time and a very unique format. I really like the games that you guys play on it. So definitely make sure that you check out not only my episode, but all the other episodes of the Weekend Talk. And I'll definitely be putting a link to those in the description below if you want to check them out.
Thank you. So we've had episodes where we're looking at ancient aliens, or we're looking at cursed items, and it's been really fun to watch the people on the show. Especially, like, I know, like when you and I were talking, it's like you don't need to know all the answers, but you
Yeah.
get to explore the answers together and have a good time. So that's been very rewarding, is to get
Mm-hmm.
to network with people that are still in like my field, but
Yeah.
then bring heritage and history to the 21st century audience that might not be able to go to university or go to the library or afford a $200 book just to read maybe one chapter in it that they're interested in. And then some of my colleagues have recently started a group called Menem Archaeology. It stands for Middle Eastern, North African, and Mediterranean Archaeology. So we're looking at areas like in that region, talking about historical finds and just events that have happened and sharing it with an audience. So they're all peer-reviewed posts that we do on our Instagram. And then we're also doing peer-reviewed articles on our website. And eventually I'll be doing my TikTok debut for that as well, kind of bringing everything we write on the video platform that is TikTok that terrifies me. It's this nice collaboration trying to show that you don't need to have a PhD or be recognized by university to still write peer-reviewed articles in research that is good and it can stand on its own. And it's that whole idea of breaking down the elitism in academia and making it more accessible.
Oh, that sounds really, really interesting. I'll definitely make sure to check that out. So a bit of a side question. You finished your degree and then obviously COVID happened and you're looking to do a PhD, but outside of museums, have you thought about working in commercial archaeology at all?
I have contemplated it. So I have looked at, like, I think in the States, obviously, as we call it, CRM work. We have the commercial work in London, and I have looked at it. The issue is sometimes it's not necessarily easiest for me to travel places in London. I don't have a car, I don't have a license here. So if I did have to go do excavations, it would have to be city work, and there it's really hard to get into. If you really want to excavate in London, you have to be pretty impressive for them.
Probably just be like, oh, we're gonna have to give her a visa, which is again another part that I'm sure both of us are very familiar with. And one of the key topics that people often ask me about on my channel is like, can I come and work in the UK on a visa in archaeology? And it's really unfortunate that a lot of the time I have to say probably not. My path to doing that has never relied on a work visa. That's the key thing, is that work visas in archaeology are virtually non-existent. But now that the world is opening back up a bit and getting back to normal, I don't really think pre-pandemic normal will ever exist again. So in that respect, now that you perhaps have more of an opportunity now to get back onto doing a PhD, but you've also developed all of these community networks through Safe Cultural Heritage Group and MENAM. What are your plans for the future?
So I've looked at a PhD at UCL. Funny enough, UCL is what got me started looking at masters, and I might end up for a PhD there. I have a friend who's doing her PhD. She's a Mayanist. She's going there. She's finishing up. I'm hopefully going to be meeting with her in the department this year, so I can at least give them my ideas, and then we can formulate a plan, because PhDs for any degree, I guess, for international students is very expensive per year. And unless you're going to get grants and scholarships, I could be paying upwards of £20,000 a year for a PhD for 5 years.
Yikes.
Yes. Yeah. Hence why I think the goal is currently to get citizenship. Unfortunately, I can't grandfather myself in. I wish I could, but that can take up to 5 years. I have to live here for about 5 years or so until I can apply for that. So I think the goal right now is to continue developing those side projects and meeting with universities, letting them know my intentions, so that when I do get to an opportunity or a point where I can either afford to go to get my PhD or be lucky enough to get grants and scholarships, I can just kind of like hold back a bit. So eventually, hopefully, maybe UCL, hopefully a PhD. But there's also talk with Menem Archaeology of eventually after this year applying for like a National Geographic grant, so that we could go out to different sites and museums and digitize them for our website to make them accessible free of charge.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we could even just go to museums and look at archival pieces and write about those and bring them to the public, because there's not much information on a museum catalog versus just what it is, and maybe a link to a book that was written about it once. It'd be nice to go and digitize some of this stuff and bring it to a platform that is easily accessible. It's one click away, it's one Google away, and you can have all the information that you want at your fingertips. And that's kind of, I think, my project and my goal now for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and then, you know, if that really takes off, then you won't need a PhD.
Exactly. Then I could just be like, oh, I'll wait till I get an honorary doctorate. Then I can still call myself doctor, right?
You mentioned that you've done some digs in Egypt, but I think you've also dug in Mexico as well?
Yeah, so I've dug in Belize and
Belize,
Peru. So
yeah.
I did Central and South America. I started in Peru, actually. I was right outside of Nazca. I was digging a Inca site, like a burial
Very
area.
cool.
So I got to excavate a ceremoniously buried like temple area and then a grave site just off of that. And it was very fascinating. It was like off the side of one of the largest sand dunes in Peru as well. So a lot of sand. It was kind of
Yep.
like, oh, this is getting me prepared for Egypt. This is great. I was there for 2 months. I got to find like a sacrificial guinea pig that was in a gourd by
Oh.
itself. Yeah, I felt bad for the guinea pig, but at the same time, I'm like, you're adorable and you're ancient, and I love you that much now. I even got to work with a mummy, like it was a naturally mummified woman who
Mm,
we believe died in childbirth because her infant child was interned in another gourd next
mm,
to her. So either died in childbirth or she even had remnants of cavities of abscess.
yeah.
So she could have died from that as well. But of
Hmm.
course, we'll never know. It's just
Yeah.
something where you can say, a baby's here, woman's here. These are the signs that could have killed her. But
Hmm.
unless I travel back in time, I'll have no clue. But that was a great experience. And then I did another excavation in Belize. I got to like head some of the excavation teams there at one point, and I excavated temples and tombs and pyramids. And then I even got to do carbon dating in a cave. So I got to go spelunking.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was intense. It was really great. The Maya believed that caves were the entrances into the underworld.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of instances where you could see handprints on the cave or just like the torch marks from obviously their torches in the cave. There is a cave nearby that actually has sacrificial remains in it, and ceramic vessels. That
Yeah.
cave is called, it's called ATM Cave. Do Google it.
Okay.
Amazing. You actually swim into it, and then you have to climb up a little bit of the cave wall and then take off your shoes and then walk around barefoot because you could be stepping on ceramics or bones, and they want to make sure that you don't do that. So if you don't
Yeah.
have shoes on, you'll be able to tell immediately before you're breaking history.
Yeah.
But it is incredible. It's a great experience. Anyone can actually go do tours now there. And I remember being going in there to visit with my professor, Dr. Jaime Alway. He's incredible. He was talking to us about the cave excavations because he was the one that headed them back in the day. And all the tour people were coming in being like, oh, Dr. Alway, I have your book in my bag. If you just wait, can like you sign it? Like they were fangirling out with my professor, who I'm just like, I play beer pong with him and he teaches me fun facts. Like I didn't actually realize how big of a deal he was
Yeah. Yeah.
until you're in the middle of a cave asking for autographs.
That's
It
so
was
crazy.
incredible. Yeah, and then I also worked at Xunantunich, which is on the border of Belize and Guatemala,
Hmm.
and that is a giant pyramid complex with a temple on top, and I excavated that temple. I've been asked a lot by Egyptologists why I ever switched to Egypt, because they were
Yeah.
like, no, that's, you're in a jungle, you're doing like Indiana Jones things. Why would you switch? And I was like, good question. I do like ancient Egypt, but I think the excavators, archaeologist dream was definitely Belize, and I would go back if ever asked, just because.
So what are the digs that you've done in Egypt then?
So I did an excavation in the Delta, and it was actually a really cool site. It was first occupied by the ancient Egyptians, so you have like the ancient Egyptian temple foundations that you can find and you can excavate. We found little bronze figurines of different gods and goddesses. And we found obviously like ceramic vessels or wine storage areas like their beer. And then we find that when you get above that, there's actually ancient Roman remains. So the Romans came in and were building on top of it. So you have like Roman stables and houses. And then it's actually the second largest Roman bathhouse in Egypt was at this site. And it hasn't been published just yet because it's still like, ooh, we have to excavate more secrets.
Yeah.
But basically it's gorgeous. Like you have the bathhouse, you have the two areas where they're heating the water and then pumping it through the bathhouse. And
Hmm.
on the side of that are actually all of these ceramic vessels that they were storing their drinks in, so that you can obviously be served alcoholic drinks and beverages to your
Yeah.
delight at this bathhouse. And it's really cool. So you could go to the site. It's all mud brick at one point. So it's a little difficult for some people in the Delta because mud is
Yeah.
just your sand that you're excavating and then delta water coming in. So you're like, is this mud or is it mud brick? And it takes some time to differentiate it, but basically if it's just a little more dense, it's a brick, and if it's a little more loose, it's modern mud. But you're doing that excavations, you're finding all these precious like bronze pieces. I think those are my favorites that have now turned green, but we had like a cobra headpiece as well that came up, and it was just made of full bronze, and you could see the level of care that was put into it, even though it's now eroding away. And I was just like, this is adorable. Again, I think that's what I do when I excavate. I'm like, you are very cute, you are my new favorite thing. And everyone in excavations are just like, okay, we're just gonna let her keep digging in that temple complex right there, and we'll go do all the bigger stuff while Megan's just staring at a bronze figurine.
Okay, well, to lead on from that then, what are your best and worst field experiences?
Ooh, I think, okay, I'll start with the worst one because I think that's always like the easier stuff.
Yeah.
In Peru, when we excavated that mummy, we hadn't realized that her brain was still intact.
Oh.
It started decomposing the moment we got it into the lab. And the lab was in the same area that we were sleeping in. So it was just in a different room. And immediately you're just like, who died in our house? And then you have to be like, oh, that was probably not, like, that was the worst thing to say because she's decomposing now. So it was a lot like a rescue process, I guess, at that point, to have to get that material removed and preserved in a way that's not going to rot or decompose the mummy further. But the thing that makes it even worse is we all ended up getting sick at that point. So all of us were losing things at both ends, feeling like it was the mummy's curse. And I was just like, oh, Howard Carter would be having a field day right now with all of us dying over a mummy. Like, what's the irony in that? I bet Indiana Jones laughing should have belonged in a museum, shouldn't have put it in our lab. So that was the worst experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I don't recommend it. If you're going to excavate a mummy, do it in very dry conditions.
Was it like a bug that you all got, or was it just like the smell?
I think it was probably a bug.
Okay.
I think it had a bit of coincidence, but when you are working with organic material, you can catch things from that.
So it's like if she died and she, like, 2,000 years later, she got you all ill, as like, how dare you dig me up?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what a definite coincidence, the curse of the mummy. I hope she got her revenge and found it hysterical. One girl was so sick that she actually had a dream that mummy woke up and was just berating her in her room. And so we were like, well, that's not helping our mummy curse cause, because I think maybe she's just really mad at us.
Like, I don't have a super similar experience, but when I went to go see Indiana Jones 4, I went to go see it in the theater, and I saw like a midnight showing, and I felt fine when I got to the theater. But then we are like partway through the movie, and there's a scene where they make him stare into the crystal skull, and it's like having an effect on him, and the shot is like is as if you're him and you're staring it down. And I remember very vividly having a thought, being like, oh, I don't feel so good. Yeah, I don't feel great right now. And then I made it through the rest of the movie and went home, and the next day had probably one of the highest fevers that I'd ever had in my life. And I was like very, very ill for like 24 hours. It was, or 48 hours. It was like a very strange bug. And then I was fine afterwards. And I was like, it was the crystal skull. It cursed me through the movie.
That's what you get for watching the fourth movie. How could you do that?
I know. That's it. Yeah, my mistake. Jeez. All right, so I'm actually kind of surprised, because you've had MERS and you've been cursed by a mummy. So like, you have some really bad luck. We'll move it into more positive territory. What's your best experience, or like your favorite field experience that you've had?
I would say it actually is Belize. I mean, as much as an Egyptologist shouldn't say Belize. In the temple complex. So we were excavating this temple on top of a pyramid, and we're basically, what we're doing is we're excavating through a plaster floor, trying to see if there's any more like built underneath it, because the Maya like to keep building on top of their buildings. So there's usually like 13 different construction phases that you'll find. And we're excavating through the temple floor. While we're excavating the plaster out, we actually have workmen that are recreating bricks to then preserve and conserve the temple that we're working on. So as we're putting things away, they're building up new walls as it would have looked, which is really cool. So I'm doing that when I break through this plaster floor, and there's a red painted floor underneath it. which was incredible because if people don't know about Belize, it is basically very moist, it's very humid. So paint does not last very well in Belize, even though the Maya would have had beautifully, elaborately painted murals and floors and ceilings. That stuff just doesn't save, it doesn't preserve, you don't find it very often. So as I broke through and I found this red floor, I got very excited and then immediately was like, I need to protect this baby because now it's exposed and
Yeah.
like, what do we do? I remember as I told my supervisor at the time, some workmen went down this pyramid, across another pyramid, through a courtyard, and they found some of the other workmen. And next thing I knew, everyone was over here trying to look at this red painted floor because it had reached all the other excavation units.
Yeah.
And it was like a very surreal moment to be like, yes, this is my baby. I found a red painted floor. Everyone be amazed.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that once it was cataloged, once we had found it, we then covered it right back up. Like we actually
Yeah.
made the conscious decision to say, like, we don't want to ruin it further. There's
Yeah.
not too much that we could study on it based on, we took like, I think a little bit to be able to examine what paint was used. But other than that, it was then just preserved. It was covered back over so that maybe in the future, if someone has even more incredible technology, they can study it. But if not, it can at least stay as it was intended to stay for
Yeah.
thousands of years.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a great answer. Would you count the floor as your favorite thing that you discovered?
That's hard. I mean, I've discovered many pretty things in my lifetime. I've had full ceramic vessels that are intricately painted, which if any archaeologist out there knows, finding a fully intact ceramic vessel is incredibly difficult, let
Yeah.
alone when it's fully painted. So
Hmm.
that's been a proud moment. I think my favorite piece, this is not glamorous at all, but in Egypt, we found a giant ceramic vessel that I could fit in if I wanted to, but it had been put upside down and placed into a corner of a room. And we
Yeah.
don't know why. It like they purposely dug out this corner of the room, shoved a ceramic vessel in there, and then left it for thousands of years just to
Okay.
confuse archaeologists. So when I was excavating through, and I was so proud, I'm like, this is the first unit that I get to head. I am one of the supervisors.
Yeah.
My workmen go through the top and I don't know what I'm looking at because it's just the bottom of a pot. And because it
Yeah.
had been broken, I'm thinking, no, it has to be a rim. And then you're looking further and you're like, no, it's actually the bottom. Well, if it's already like certain size, like how big is this vessel?
Yeah.
Start digging and digging and digging. And it's this huge ceramic vessel that, like I said, I could fit into, but they lifted it out and we're expecting, okay, is something inside of it? Nothing was inside this pot. They left nothing for us. It is just a pot and a wall, and it's only my favorite because it confuses me.
Very interesting. So leading on from that then, if you had like a certain era, time of history or civilization to pick from, travel back and to visit, what would you pick?
I would love to go see the Mayan Empire as it like
Hmm.
was the grand it could be because the Maya were incredible. I think that would have been really fun to see. I would love to go to Greece and like see Greece before Rome decided to take everything from them. I think that would have been very lovely.
Yeah.
And then same with Egypt. I would have loved to see the like the new kingdom, the golden age of Egypt when all the pyramids and temples were being built and used to
Yeah.
their full potential. Maybe even go see Alexandria before the library burnt down and just pretend I was a man so I could go read library books and
Yeah.
things. I don't know if I
Hmm.
can necessarily pick one.
One.
Definitely wouldn't live in any of them. I like having my rights now.
But if I had to live in one, it would probably be ancient Egypt because I've always read that their women's rights were actually a lot more advanced than like places like Greece or Rome. Like women were
Oh yeah.
allowed to own things and your husband couldn't have a second wife without your permission, and you were allowed to have like a profession outside of being a house like a wife and mother. All right, so we'll move on to our last question to tie everything off today, which is what do you have to say to inspire or pass anything on to anybody who'd like to follow in your footsteps?
I would say if you're interested in ancient history or digging up old things, as I was, never be afraid to reach out to people whose books or articles inspire you and you enjoy reading. A
Hmm.
lot of the times people are, even myself, are nervous to, you find an article online, let's say you Google a topic you're interested in, you find something to read, and then there's a paywall and it tells you need to spend £30 or $30 to access this article. If you find that ever happens, do see if you can actually find the contact details for the person who wrote it. 9 times out of 10, if you email them to say that you're interested in that specific thing that they wrote, they will send it to you for free. I even have a big catalog of articles and books all digitized on my laptop. So if you ever need something, come ask me on Egyptian Rose as well on Instagram. I have had a lot of people come up to me asking for what they should read, and I will send you digitized books because I don't believe that those things should ever be behind a paywall. It's
Yeah.
history. It's meant for everybody else. So if
Yeah.
I have it, I'll give it to you. So I think that's the best advice, is don't be afraid to actually reach out to the people that inspire you, because a lot of the times they also are interested in inspiring you as well.
Oh, that's really great. And a great point as well, because especially with a lot of academic publications, is that money or that paywall that's behind, if you pay for it, it's actually going to the publisher, it's not going to the authors. And a lot of the time the authors actually have to pay to publish something, which I don't
Yeah.
think people are often aware of.
Once they've got it published, they don't care what the publication is going to make, how many views it's going to get. They just care that it's been published. So if you can reach out to them and just ask for that written manuscript that they more than likely have on a hard drive somewhere, they're very happy to share it, because they just want to talk about their research. They're doing it because they love it, not because there's money in it, because sad to say, there's no money in academia, but there's a lot of love and a lot of excitement and adventure inside of it.
Oh, I think that's a great note to end our interview on today. So thanks once again, Megan, for joining us on Ask an Archaeologist. Do you want to sign off or tell everybody where they can find you if they're interested in following you?
Of course. So Instagram is my main thing. So do follow me at Egyptian_Rose. That is my main platform. It probably will be linked somewhere in this video, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I also encourage you guys to go follow Save Cultural Heritage Group. And then lastly, go follow Menem Archaeology. So it's just at MENAM Archaeology. It's also on my Instagram. So as long as you find Egyptian Rose, you'll find everything else.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming. And I look forward to having you back on the channel in future. For sure.
I look forward to being back. Thank you so much.
Okay guys, that's everything for today. I hope that you guys had a great time watching this interview with Megan, as she and I both had a really enjoyable time filming it together. If you'd like to follow Megan on Instagram, I have all of her socials linked below in the description, as well as those for the Save Cultural Heritage Group and Menem Archaeology. So definitely make sure to check out these other groups and see what else is going on in the archaeological online space. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to help support my channel to make more videos like this. If you have any questions for me or Megan, please put them in the comments below and we will do our best to answer them. Lastly, if you can go give me a follow on Instagram and show your support on that platform, I would really appreciate it. And I've got lots of behind the scenes and additional content on there for you to see that I don't necessarily always show on this channel. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye!